I just want to welcome everyone here. This is the Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary Tour that's presented by the Unitarian Universalist Animal Ministry, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm Kathleen Jeffries, Vice President of the UUAM Board of Directors. Our mission is to empower others to build justice and compassion for animals. We do this through our several local chapters who are supported by our board of directors and staff, and through programs such as this one. This program is being recorded. Oh, and I better hit the record, or Julie, can you hit the record for us?
It said earlier it was recording.
Okay, all right. Oh, I think I might have had already said. Okay, that's good. Thank you. And so this will be available on our website. I'm getting interrupted by people joining the room. Will be on our website and our YouTube channel. Past programs on a variety of topics, including planning for pollinators, writing for animals, from fork to forest, and getting political for animals, can be found on our website. We have some delicious cooking demos classes coming up and planned for the future too. I believe that one of the most effective actions we can take to benefit animals is to spread knowledge of the inherent worth of their lives and the rich emotions that they possess, and the horrid conditions that many endure. This knowledge can build compassion and lead to humans to make thoughtful and humane choices every day. These are the driving principles of both UUAM and Luvin Arms. I have a long history with Luvin Arms, having been one of the handful of original volunteers in 2015, and later serving on staff as volunteer and administrative director until moving to Indianapolis. I look forward to seeing some of my favorite and most engaging buddies at Luvin Arms today. And I'm not good at getting in front of my camera, but I have my grass puppy shirt on today. That's Tito. I'm not sure if he'll show up or not. This is their home, so they could be roaming anywhere. So we'll see who turns up for the tour. I'm joined today by two dear friends, Julie Arnold and Kelly Nix. Julie, who also has a history of volunteering and being on staff at Luvin Arms, has prepared the slides for today and will be handling the behind-the-scenes logistics, such as questions and monitoring the chat. We ask that everyone stay muted unless recognized to speak, so that we can enjoy and hear the tour with Kelly. And now I will introduce, let me just see if I can, I can't do that. I will introduce Kelly Nix, our tour guide for today. Kelly is the Executive Director of Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary. And before I go into all of Kelly's background and achievements, let me say a bit about Luvin Arms. And I hope I'm not cutting into any of Kelly's presentation, but let me say Luvin Arms consists of 40 acres with a former farmhouse that is now used as offices and meeting rooms. The original farm barns and several residential areas and buildings that have been constructed for the over 120 residents who have been rescued from dire situations. Anyone who has cared for even one pet can imagine the logistics of caring for 120 plus. And these animals are ones that have not been bred to live for a long time, only for a few months. Yet they are at Luvin Arms, living out their natural lives with carefully planned diets, regular medical care, and enrichment and emotional enrichment. They're living the life, you know. So now I want to get down to the facts of Kelly, and I'm going to have to read this because there's a lot here. Kelly is an educator, an advocate, and thought leader whose work bridges human rights, animal welfare, and environmental justice. She champions education as the primary catalyst for creating a more compassionate and just world. She's working on her doctorate too, almost done. And through that, she's introducing the Web of Liberation, a transdisciplinary framework that maps the connections between racism, speciesism, ableism, patriarchy, and ecological destruction. She is committed to comprehensive liberation. One last thing I want to add. This coming fall, Kelly will pursue an Animal Law Master of Studies in Law, which is called an MSL, through Lewis and Clark Law School. So Kelly, I will hand this over to you now, and I thank you for being with us here today.
Sorry, it took me a second there to find the unmute button, but thank you, Kathleen. And it's super great to do this and meet all of you all. And I'm so glad that this is also being recorded. And so for today, just a couple of logistical things before we formally get started. We will be visiting just the residents of our big barn, which is home to our sheep, our cows, our bigs, which are big pigs, and our goats. And number one, the primary reason, the internet connection is way better in Big Barn than it is anywhere else in the sanctuary. But number two, we are also having some of our residents that are under quarantine right now. So our bird population is under quarantine, not because they are ill, but because avian flu is very much a thing. And we just want to ensure our residents' safety. And part of that is just ensuring that we're not bringing large amounts of people to come into the sanctuary and potentially just bring in anything that they should not bring in. Number two, we are located here in Erie, Colorado, and we are in a very kind of rural part of town. And with that said, there is a lot of natural wildlife that is here as well. One being baby bunnies, right? And also prairie dogs. And so we've had both and continue to have both live in similar, very close proximity to our potbelly population. And unfortunately, mites became a thing. And so our potbellies have been under treatment. And because there is a shared living space down there with our donkeys and our horses, they are all now under quarantine receiving that treatment. But I'll make sure that this is super exciting and you get to meet some incredible residents. And then we will go through species by species. So we will start with our sheep, then we will go to cows, then we will go to pigs, and we will finish up with goats. I highly encourage people to ask questions. If you would, as questions kind of pop up, whether if it's while I'm speaking or while we're looking at some residents, if you could put that in the chat box. I know Julie will be monitoring the chat. And after we're done meeting a particular group of residents, I will take a few moments to get those questions and do the best I can in answering those. But before we formally start, are there any questions just right off the top of your head that you're just dying to ask? If not, we will get started. Perfect. Okay, so as I mentioned before, internet connection is not awesome. So I am going to give you a quick view of the sanctuary as far as like what it looks like when we're looking out, and then hopefully be able to point out some additional structures going a little bit further east on our property. So this is probably not the last time you'll see me, but the last time you'll see me for a little while. I'm going to change the camera here and then flip it this way. Good deal. Okay, so when coming to Luvin Arms, you will enter in from our main road, which is County Road 7. Unfortunately, it looks like there's some cloud coverage here, so you can't see the awesome Rocky Mountains, but we really do have probably one of the best views in the world. It is absolutely majestic and gorgeous out here and very peaceful. Considering the work we do, this is fantastic. And so the area that we're here now is the big barn that's facing west. And you'll see that our goats and our sheep inhabit this area. And so they do share the same pasture space out there. This is something that you'll probably note when we talk about sheep and cows. Goats and pigs can go out at the same time. However, they are divided by a fence, whereas the sheep and cows are not. They share the exact same grazing space together. But with these guys, they cannot, unfortunately, graze together just because we both species are pretty food. I don't want to say food aggressive, but food motivated. So for their safety, they are separated. But we'll definitely go in and meet. And then for some of you who may remember or have been here, that guy out there mowing the lawn is Rob. He's an awesome facilities contractor. If you ever come out to Luvin Arms, you see Rob, say hi. Kathleen had mentioned about the farmhouse that was here on site when we first moved here, and that is the blue house over there. Over in this area, this is what we call our legacy barn. That is the formal title of that barn. However, it is used for quarantine, so sometimes people refer to it as the quarantine barn. But for staff and a lot of good, like a handful of volunteers, we call it creepy barn. It is scary, but it does serve a really great purpose. And that purpose is whenever we do rescue a new resident, we will house that individual in that space for at least 30 days. There are some exceptions, but generally it is 30 days. So the reason why 30 days, it gives our vet team, whether if we're working directly with Colorado State University's vet school or a private vet, it gives them that time to get out here to run the tests that are necessary to administer the vaccines needed, and really just to ensure that not only are they going to remain healthy, but when they are integrated with the rest of their new friends, that everyone will remain healthy, but also for the caregivers and the visitors that come to visit. But the other reason too is that even though, you know, the resident has been rescued, this is a happy place, this is their forever home. Again, many of these guys, all of them come from terrible situations of abuse, neglect, directly from the food system or not. And so as they have lived however many years in these systems, that's obviously very traumatic. And even though rescue is positive, it is still a traumatic experience. They are now leaving the only thing that they've known, whether if it's good or bad, for however many years or days or weeks that they have been alive, into now a different situation. Again, though positive, is traumatic. So this time in the quarantine area allows them to acclimate to their new surroundings, recognize the smells around them before being integrated. And then to finish off this way, if we're looking east, you will see over here to the left is our equine and potbelly area. We have 2 horse residents, 3 donkeys, and 18 potbellies, which was only supposed to be 5. And that's a story for a later time. And then over here on the right, we have 2 bird barns, our avian homes, and then a tour guide and a guest. And so the bird barns are home to ducks, roosters, chickens, turkeys, and 1 peahen. And if you didn't know, which I didn't know until I started working here, peahen is a female peacock. So here, where we will be spending the majority of our time, is called the Big Barn. This is again home to our sheep, our cows, our pigs, and our goats. So we are going to start with our sheep residents as we enter. Oh, hi guys. So nice and quiet in here. All you hear are birds. I have a feeling that's going to change pretty quickly. All right. Okay, actually, we'll start off in the less populated area. All right. So for those of you who have been here before, these 3 may be very, very familiar to you, but we have Jared over here standing up. We've got his mama, Maxine, here laying down, ruminating, and also Jared's sister, who's also part of a triplet set, Lexine. Their 3rd triplet is Jacqueline, and Jacqueline is, oh, her ears perked up. Jacqueline, for some reason, is over here hanging out. So this is Jacqueline. I love their faces. Okay. So here, again, so some of you may be wondering, like, why are these 3 closed off from the rest of the flock here? Well, I think Lexine's just here for moral support, to be very honest with you. But really, it is Maxine and Jared. So Maxine is an older gal, but also we just want to ensure that she's getting enough food. As for some of you who've been here, you can see if you might remember what it's like when all the sheep are kind of like in one stall trying to feed at one time. And so Mama Maxine here isn't as quick sometimes and can be pushed around. And so that is the primary reason she's separated, just to ensure she can eat as much as possible. And then for those of you, whether if you've been here or not, if you get our emails, you may have seen some recent donation requests specifically for Jared. So Jared here, a couple months ago now, he started trembling, his head was shaking, and it's a little hard to maybe see that now, but he still has it just a little bit. But Jared, number one, is an extremely personable sheep. Sheep aren't known to be overly friendly, engaging with folks. If anything, they are very timid. They are very shy. But Jared is definitely um, the exception to it all. So anyways, when we noticed that Jared was doing a little bit of trembling, you might be able to see it if I stand still. But when we noticed it a while back, it was pretty prevalent, very noticeable that he was trembling. So we had taken him up to CSU. They have done MRIs and CAT scans and blood work. And they also did a spinal tap to find out what was going on. Thankfully, nothing came back. However, the symptoms are still here. So Jared is currently on quite a few medications, specifically for pain, but then also we have a vet that comes out to do acupuncture for him. We do laser therapy with him as well. And so one of the things that's pretty neat is the vet has identified and has marked a couple of black spots, and those are the places where the needle is inserted for the acupuncture. But for those of you who have met Jared or have heard about Jared or know Jared, will see that this is absolutely kind of a heartbreaking way to see him. It's not Jared, the super social guy, but I will say that he still is very much here. He still engages, but he has withdrawn a little bit more, something very different for Jared to do. But yeah, so that's Jared, Maxine, and Lexine. And how they got here. So Maxine actually was found with a flock of sheep that were essentially abandoned. We have no idea where they originally came from, but this is out in California. And when animal rescuers arrived, they had seen that the sheep were essentially malnourished. They were eating wool off of each other, eating anything they could to get any sort of sustenance. And then shortly after Maxine was rescued, she gave birth to triplets. She was so underweight, no one had any idea that she was even pregnant, right? Let alone pregnant with triplets. But as most of us know, when a woman is becoming a mother, and the diet is really important. It helps with milk production, or can help with that. Because Maxine's diet was so poor, during the majority of her pregnancy, if not her whole pregnancy, she wasn't able to produce enough milk for all 3 babies. So what ended up happening was Maxine would be able to feed Lexine over here, her daughter, and then Jacqueline. And then Jared was bottle fed by people, which also really showed later on as they grew up and started maturing. Jared was always more friendly, more willing to engage with folks, not as shy as most sheep are. Whereas the 3 girls were a little bit more timid. But I will stop just for a minute, let you all just take a good look at these guys' face and see how cute they are. But this is Lexine. I think she just stopped doing. Sorry, Lexine. And you'll see Maxine here. So we have a program here at the sanctuary called Clicker Play, which is essentially like a behavioral training program. Some of you may be familiar with Clicker Play because a lot of people will do it with like a companion animal, like a dog. We do it here for a couple of reasons. Cognitive enrichment is one, to establish kind of a shared common language and trust amongst, our residents and the human people here that support them. But also, I would say, the communication, the trust, and then cognitive enrichment. So Maxine here has had a Clicker Play partner for several years now, and her name is Janelle. And Janelle, I think, really also has a similar personality to Sheep. She's very shy, very sweet. And I think Clicker Play was very beneficial for both individuals. So when Maxine first came here, extremely terrified of people, would never, ever, right, be willing or open to any sort of affection or love from people. But a lot of credit goes to Janelle and the patience that she's had, and working with Maxine all of these years because Maxine now is probably one of our most like lovable and open to affection sheep now. But it definitely took years for her to reestablish or even establish for the first time any sort of trust with people. They're so quiet today. All right, so we're gonna go over onto the other side, meet the rest of those sheep. Actually, I'm gonna just divert really quickly. I see Lizzie is making her bed to lay down next to Felix. If I could capture this, so you guys get a good look. So I know I said we would do sheep, cows, then pigs, but I wanted to see if Lizzie would continue making her bed so that way she could get ready to lie down next to her best bud and her love, Felix. So this is Lizzie. As you can see, she is getting her area prepped. And again, and she also, pigs in general, but Lizzie specifically gives the best side eye. And so you just never know. There's a little bit of attitude behind it, which I appreciate. But you'll see, here's Felix. So Felix and Lizzie definitely have a very special relationship. You will always find these two together, at least at nighttime, when they go down for naps. During the day, though, I will say they take their time apart. And I think that's reflective of any relationship. You need a little bit of time apart from your loved one, but they always come back in the evening. And more times than not, you will find Lizzie getting Felix's bed ready for the evening as well. But watching pigs create their beds is probably one of the cutest and most entertaining things because it looks kind of simple, right? She draw around, maybe nudges a blanket here or there, but there's a lot of thought behind what it is that they're doing because you will see that there will be times where it could take an hour of making a bed before they actually decide like, okay, this is exactly what it is. So Felix is 10 years old and he's our oldest pig. And then here is Lizzie, and Lizzie is what, 7, 8. And so Felix is a little bit slower. And so Lizzie definitely ensures to be there to help him and help him, in for the night or to get up. Sometimes you'll see her there to help motivate him to get up. As Felix gets older, simple things like getting up on his own becomes a little bit harder to do. Sometimes I think it's an act though, because I could come in here with some fruit and he's up very quickly. So I think he likes when we are being a little bit more compassionate with like, oh, he's getting older and he needs to take his time. But really, that's not the case. He's so young at heart still. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, no worries. And then you'll see here, Lizzie has finally made her bed. She shifted a lot of that straw and blankets over to the side here. But again, these two, you'll always see them together, regardless of the time of day, what time of year. Super connected. But we'll talk about pigs more. I just wanted to show Lizzie making her bed, but she did it quite quickly.
Can I break
No,
my
you're
rule
fine. Yes.
here and tell my quick story about Felix?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, okay, it was the summer of 2015, and a petition went around, and I always get choked up when I say this. Someone was trying to rescue 2 pigs. They have these demonstration farms that show how pigs were used in the old days, and there are a couple of them around Luvin Arms. And so a petition went around, because these pigs are so engaging and have so much personality that they, the people fall in love with them, and they were trying to save them. And I signed the petition. And so then, a few months later, they were one of the first residents at Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary. And I said, let's do bios on these animals. And I started writing it. And I found out that Felix and Franklin, his brother, who's no longer with us, were the two pigs that were saved because of that petition. So all of this to say, sign those petitions.
Oh, thanks, Kathleen. And yeah, and I guess the more, I don't know, I don't even know if it's surprising anymore, but that particular tourist attraction is still very much in operation. It is still something that they do. And a lot of these places who do operate, you know, kind of with this agenda of reenacting lives from the 17 or 1800s, they will categorize themselves as educational kind of institutions, and that's how they get away with it. So where Fee and his brother Franklin were rescued from, that organization is still there. They still, every year I go to check to see if maybe they're going to change this year, but they will sell kid tickets. There's kid ticket prices. And so it's horrific, but again, it is considered acceptable because they kind of use the cloak of education to justify what it is that they do and why they do it. But we'll definitely talk about our pigs more. And I know the person on this call here, if you're ever interested in more things Felix, you're definitely welcome to reach out to Kathy McGee, who has literally been Felix's sole partner for like close to 10 years. So this lady has watched him grow up. So, and I'm super thankful for all that she has done for pigs as well. But moving forward, and while I was sitting here, Marilyn decided to come up, and she doesn't maybe look like it, but she was like, her face was on my face. But that's Marilyn. So Marilyn is part of a rescue that happened in the summer of 2023. And so is Shy. And his name is Shy, but he is definitely not shy. He probably has one of the best sheep personalities you will ever meet. He is extremely funny, and Shy just wants to be known. It doesn't matter who's visiting or why you're visiting. He will always make sure his presence is known. So with that said, Shy, this guy here, and then the guy back there, and I'll go up closer, his name is Huckleberry, but at the time of rescue, his name was Hershey. We changed it because, again, as a vegan sanctuary, we want to ensure that we are not commodifying our animals. And so Huckleberry just made a lot of sense. Marilyn over there, who was just near us. And then we have Junebug, this one here. And then we have Fauna. And then we have Flora. We're all part of that rescue with Marilyn, Shy, and Huckleberry. It was a pretty severe abuse neglect case that didn't just happen towards the farmed animals they had on property, but was also something that was happening between the romantic relationships amongst the people who inhabited that area. And so essentially it was an elderly couple. The woman had lived through years, if not decades, of abuse from her spouse. And she finally got to that point where she was done. She was leaving, but was also given a very specific timeline that you have X amount of hours to get your farmed animals out of here, or I'm going to take care of them. And so Luvin Arms stepped in and we brought these sheep home. You can see they are still a little bit skittish, I want to say, or just worried around people. But through clicker play, I will say that they have made tremendous growth and actually now will approach you when they're ready. Before, they wouldn't even come anywhere near people. And so it's beautiful to see kind of that trust develop within them. Oh, and let me show you Huckleberry. Part of when that rescue occurred, it was made apparent, and also through confirmation of the lady of the house, that none of the farmed animals on the property had ever received any sort of veterinary care. And that was very prevalent with this guy here, Huckleberry. So if you'll notice, his horns are circular or half circles. When we rescued him, he actually had a full, like, I guess a full set of his horns to where it grew in a complete circle here and laid up against his eye. And because he had spent years like that, we weren't quite sure is he going to be visually impaired or not? Along with any other sort of health issues that we had concerns about, which also included their CHU. And I want to be very clear at Luvin Arms, and I would think at most sanctuaries, we would never dehorn or debud any of our residents. But in this case, we had to do that because, again, the way that his horns had grown in, and because it had been that way since he grew horns, we had professionals at CSU cut down his horns to a point, just like fingernails, you can go so far before it actually hurts, to make sure and to assess, like, is he visually impaired or not? Thankfully, super healthy. And his vision was not impacted. But again, so you'll notice that he's got his horns. Many of our sheep here, all of them have been debudded, which is the term used for goats and sheep, or as cows, it's dehorning. So debudding, usually what it entails is once the little nubs of their horns start to come up on their head, depending on the organization, either like hot heat will be used to burn them down so they can't grow any further. And acid will also be used to pour on top of their nubs to essentially dissolve that away, which I'm sure you can imagine using acid would then also seep onto their bones, like their skull. And so it's not as common of a practice now, but it is still very much used. And let's see. Oh, and then here's Cheerio. Cheerio is huge now. And for a while there, we used to have two other really, really wonderful residents in our sheep family, Cheerio, Teddy and Finn. Those two, yeah, I'm gonna stop for a second. So Cheerio came to us in, I want to say late summer of 2023. He was still very much a baby. He was a lamb still, under the age of 1. His mama was actually taken into an animal testing facility here in Northern Colorado. When they took her, they had no idea she was pregnant, let alone with 1 or 2. And so Cheerio actually had a twin who unfortunately did not make it. And so being born where he was born, obviously his life was going to just be discarded. But thankfully, there was a kind human that stepped in, took him in, and he was essentially living with this human in their apartment with a dog. And so, hi, Huckleberry. So what ended up happening is in the early stages of his life, because he was being treated similar to how this lady would treat her dog, walking up with a harness on a leash, sleeping indoors. Cheerio really thought he was a dog. So this lady unfortunately became unhoused, and then she had to start living in her car. With that said, she recognized that living in a car would not be the best quality of life for this guy. And so she would essentially camp outside of the sanctuary, just contemplating, like, do I really want to give him up? I have this wonderful relationship with him, but she definitely did what was best. And so when Cheerio came here, it definitely took quite some time for him to acclimate and also recognize and understand he is a sheep, and that being around other sheep is okay and is part of what sheep do. So part of that is both Teddy and Finn, who were also merino sheep, kind of took Cheerio on. More Finn kind of took him under his hoof than Teddy did. And Finn was really known as a caretaker here. Teddy was a 3-legged sheep. He had to have his leg amputated due to a shearing accident. And because of that, that just meant he was a little bit slower. And so Finn, being the great person that he was, took that responsibility on. And Finn did that with Cheerio, took him on, helped raise him into the incredible young man that he is now. And then when we had rescued Lilac in the summer of 2024, she comes from a farm to table operation, and she was just weeks old, and they were going to process her. We were able to step in and rescue her. And again, to speak about Finn, he also took Lilac on under his hoof and raised her. So here, Cheerio, again, I bring up Finn, important to say, because looking at Cheerio reminds me of looking at Finn and Teddy. Very similar looking, but again, also very similar personalities, very loving, very independent. But this is Cheerio. And then I want to show you Lilac, but as you can see, I know they're all gonna panic and run. So just know that that's the natural behavior. It's nothing I did. So, hey guys, can I go through? Oh, good job. All right. Okay. Riley, what are you doing? So this is Riley. And Riley is essentially a 4-H sheep. If you are familiar with 4-H or FFA programming, again, there's a lot of different components that are actually taught in these programs, whether if it's leadership or characteristic skills. Another part of that is that animal agricultural and how to treat them as livestock. And so Riley is a very, very lucky individual who, from some, compassionate person stepped in and rescued him. But again, there's so many hundreds of millions and billions of farmed animals who don't get that chance. And it's the same thing in the 4-H and FFA program. This gal here, this is Lilac, the one I was speaking about from the farm to table. And this was one of those farm to table operations where the farm was literally behind the table. And so that is where she comes from. She unfortunately was rejected by her mother at birth. And so because she was rejected, that meant that the staff people there would have to spend additional time raising her. And because they look at these individuals as product and not as sentient beings, they did not want to. Yes, sorry. I know I'm not supposed to answer questions till the end, but yes, LEAP is an alternative to 4-H. Sorry, I got excited. Education related. So yeah, and I'll talk about that because Luvin Arms does have a LEAP program. And we did our first year this past year, super successful. It was a smaller group. I would say 6 students altogether. Of the 6 students, we have gained 2 full-time high school interns for the summer because that's what they wanted to do. They reached out to us to continue their LEAP programming experience. All right, any other, sorry, I'm looking at Riley and I don't know what he's doing, but it's cute. I'm guessing he's like itching
Kelly,
his leg, but yeah, go ahead.
that is cute. There was a question about GFAST, if you're a part of GFAST, and also maybe you could just talk about what that is. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kathleen, I'll also just give a quick, but Kathleen played a big part in GFAST. So yes, Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary is a GFAST accredited sanctuary. So GFAST is the Global Federation for farmed animal, or for animals, right? GFAST for animal sanctuaries, sorry. So Global Federation for Animal Sanctuaries. What that means is it's not just about farmed animals. Yeah. So because there's actually a handful of GFAST accredited sanctuaries here in Colorado, but we are the first and only farmed animal sanctuary that is GFAST accredited. So if you're familiar with the Wild Animal Sanctuary, which is home to rescued bears, tigers, lions, that's out in Keensburg, Colorado. They are also a GFAST, but essentially GFAST is a very rigorous time-taking process. And really at the end of all of it is ensuring that the highest quality of care that's being provided to the residents that reside at your sanctuary, along with ensuring there's no sort of exploitation, petting zoo models. And there's a really long checklist that you have to go through. They come out to assess to ensure that, yes, what you in fact reported is what is actually happening out here. But think of like if you've heard of an accredited college or university, it's essentially the same thing. Like we're able to proudly say that, yes, we provide the highest quality of care. We don't exploit the animals that we rescue. But I'll let Kathleen, because while Kathleen was working here at the sanctuary, she was a part of the team that really got all of it done.
I did that. I did that application, and it was over a year. It took a lot. It's very, very specific, very detailed, in every aspect of care and facilities and everything. And it has to be maintained ongoing too. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a real feather in the cap to be a GFAS.
It is. And as part of being GFAS accredited, you do have to reapply to keep your certification every 3 years. So Luvin Arms is actually due for their recert in 2026. Any other questions about sheep? And also, can you guys still hear me okay? Whenever I step farther out, okay, so yes. I know the connection gets a little bit wonky.
There was a question, I think this is for maybe
Kathleen, I
Kathleen.
think.
Does UUAM financially support Luvin Arms? Maybe that's for Kathleen.
I'll say that we are subscribing to this tour. We're paying for this tour, but as an organization, as individuals we might, but as an organization, and we're not financially supporting Love and Arms, other than we are paying or donating for this tour.
Thank you. Okay. If at any point it gets too staticky, please just someone unmute and let me know. This is where connection can get a little bit unstable. So again, I pointed out when when I was showing you kind of the west and east side of the sanctuary outside of the big barn area, and I'll highlight more specifically when we go out to pigs and goats. But this here is all of the pig pasture or the cow pasture area. And again, you won't see any fencing that is dividing the pasture in half, so that way sheep and cows can go out, but they have to be separate. Our sheep and cows can very, very peacefully and safely interact with each other and share the same space. Now, it does look a little barren, a little deserty out here. And that's because our cows and our sheep, they literally everything from the root down, everything is taken out. But also, these guys are grazers. And so when they're constantly grazing and we don't have tons of moisture, it turns to look like this. But we've been very fortunate these last few weeks where it's been very, very rainy. And so the sanctuary looks very green, very beautiful. But the one thing is we have had an additional 20 acres further east that we have never really utilized. We've utilized it maybe for parking space or I don't know if it's been used for anything else outside of parking. But we used to have someone come out and help mow it down because of fire reasons. Well, we decided to do a fundraiser last year and essentially just build like perimeter fencing that encloses the last 20 acres. So that way we could allow our sheep and our cows to go out there. And it has been so successful, right? We shouldn't be paying someone to come mow it when we have individuals who could benefit from it. And so looking all the way out there, they are out in the back 20 pasture, as I can see the boys, Lucky, Milo, and Tito, all grazing. So getting them to come up this way is just not going to happen. And so we'll just meet Samantha. And then I'll introduce you to our newest cow, Barnaby, but from a very safe distance. All right. So this is Samantha. And Samantha is known as a free martin in the dairy industry. So a free martin is when a mama cow gives birth to a male and female twin. And what happens is while in utero, that female embryo is exposed to the male hormones, which can cause her to be born sterile. Now, I want to be clear, they're not always born sterile, but more than likely they will be. So if you are a female cow born on a dairy farm with a male twin, farmers already know, or just assume that's a free martin, she's of no use. And so Samantha is that free martin. And we also have another cow. Her name is Marley Rose. She's very similar looking to Samantha in the sense that they are both your traditional Holsteins. However, Marley does have her horns. And as you can see, Samantha does not. So if you did not know, males are not exclusive, or horns are not exclusive to males. Horns grow on all, whether if it's male or female. Now, Samantha, she has even more to her story. So if you've ever been out to Luvin Arms, you know this already, but if you have not, and if you do prepare to come here one day, if you're ever traveling from the south, if you're traveling, say, from Denver up to Erie, which we're about, I would say about 30 minutes north of Denver, to get to the sanctuary, you're going to pass a dairy farm along with a collection of other farmed animals who are being neglected and mistreated. And that's because we are located right next door to a dairy farm. So if you can see, there's a blue house there, kind of over past the one fence line there. You might see a tower back there. That is the dairy farm. We literally are on the other side of a split rail fence of a dairy farm. And so the reason why Samantha is here, right? Because if they're a dairy farm, it's more than likely that they've had hundreds, if not thousands, of free Martins born. That's because when Marley Rose was rescued from another dairy, but not here in Colorado, at the time she was the only female cow and she was the only baby. And so as she got older, she had actually, when she first got here, befriended a dog named Blue. And those two cuddled together. They played together, but as you can imagine, Marley definitely outgrew Blue and it became a safety issue, right? Even though they still had a very great relationship over the time that they were together, it just became a safety issue for Blue. And so Blue and Marley could really only play or interact through a fence. And because of that, Marley needed companionship because cows are extremely social and females are very maternal. And so to ensure her kind of, not just like her physical success, but really her emotional and mental, asking the next door dairy farm for a free Martin just made complete sense. So that's how these two got here. But this guy here is a unique situation. This is Barnaby. And Barnaby is an Angus cow. We have at least, and Kathleen might be able to speak to this, maybe you've come across, but since I would say like the last 2.5, almost 3 years, I have never received a rescue request for an Angus cow. If you know, and again, just speaking about Colorado, Angus is the beef product that people want, whether if it's a steak or a hamburger, whatever it is. So to literally have an opportunity to rescue a cow that really is beneficial to the meat industry, regardless of their condition, or their age or their size, was such a blessing for us. So part of what we do here at the sanctuary is when we do give tours, we do like to incorporate aspects of advocacy, but really lay it on with the foundation of education. We just want people to understand and let them kind of formulate their own judgments and opinions, and really just meet people where they are. And so again, when we would talk about cows, we have Samantha, a free Martin. So that's a really great tool and educational piece to talk about dairy. Or we have Lucky, who was just one of those beautiful, beautiful cows. And yes, he would have been used and consumed as meat. But most people wouldn't associate a cow like Lucky as a cow that you would consume. Tito, which I'm hoping by the time we're done with pigs and goats, he'll come up this way. But Tito is a product of, again, the dairy industry. He is a veal calf that was brought here. Milo, technically, Milo is a Hereford cow, which is common for meat products. But again, when folks here in Colorado think of beef, they think Angus. And so Barnaby. Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I laugh because he's going potty at the same time while looking at me. So Barnaby here was actually rejected by his mom, and the farmer who was in charge of breeding cows, he reached out to a couple of the local FFA chapters asking if anyone was willing to take on a baby calf, which would require like feedings and just kind of round the clock care, because Barnaby was also kind of fairly sick. And so Barnaby's dad, Andrew, his whole family, all participated in FFA, and they are ranchers in the Greeley community. And so his daughter, who was the FFA president at that time, and so again, to give you some context, this was only 2 years ago. Barnaby just turned 2 on March 23rd. And so his daughter, who was the president of their FFA chapter, said, I'll take him. So then she bottle fed him, raised him. There was a lot of moments where they thought they were going to lose Barnaby, but obviously he was able to get better and do well. Well, over the year, I want to say a year and 9 months that they had Barnaby, Barnaby really became kind of a pet, right? Like a dog. They really looked at Barnaby as a dog, to the point that when I showed up at their home just to meet Barnaby before planning like his transport over to the sanctuary, I walked into their home and Barnaby's dad, Andrew, looked a little bit frantic when he answered the door, and he was carrying some like washcloths, a couple of paper towels, and like a spray container, like disinfectant. And he kept apologizing. I'm so sorry. I don't normally look like this, but Barnaby's trying to eat the Christmas tree and he just pooped on the rug. And my first question is like, why is there still a Christmas tree? This is like March, but really that's, I guess, none of my business. But said, okay. So then he demoed for me how Barnaby has learned to get into the home. So Barnaby lived in their backyard field space along with 2 horses, a handful of chickens, and 1 really tiny dog. And so he got Barnaby to go outside. He shut the sliding glass door. And then here comes Barnaby, snout against the glass door and slides it open. He's like, nope, I want that Christmas tree. And again, Christmas tree in March. So with that said, Barnaby, again, was really, really loved at this house. And because they saw Barnaby as an individual, as a sentient being, as they would their companion animals, the dad, because now the daughter has since graduated high school, went off to college in a different state. Dad is also active duty military. And so he was getting ready for a deployment soon. And so he absolutely refused to do anything, right? He asked to like extend his deployment date because he wanted to make sure Barnaby found a home. So when we found out about Barnaby, of course, we want people to see these wonderful traits about Barnaby and how he genuinely thinks he's a dog, but also the fact that he is literally one of millions of cows that are seen here in Colorado and then processed here. We have been very fortunate to get him and to really talk about the meat industry and how, and how cruel it is. But Barnaby, you'll notice, is here. And I mentioned that the rest of the cowboys are down in the back 20 pasture. So Barnaby is fun. He's youthful. He's young. He's playful. Milo is just a lover of all kinds. And Milo likes to demonstrate his love to Barnaby in not the safest of ways. So right now, Barnaby, if you come out here, you'll see that one is on stall rest while the other is out playing, and they flip-flop. The goal is not to keep it this way forever. That would be so unsustainable and not the highest quality of life. But for now, Barnaby and Milo, the second time they were playing, Milo essentially placed all his weight on top of Barnaby, which ended up cracking his hooves. So again, for size comparison and just to better understand why Barnaby will stay in the backyard part of the cow area while Milo is out with the other guys, and then they flip-flop days. But that's Barnaby. And then Samantha. So this is a really great example. So we offer an opportunity here called Cow Cuddles, and it is such a life-changing experience for so many people. So essentially what people will do is they get to schedule a time to come out here and cuddle cows. And so why I stopped to show you this with Samantha. So where you see Samantha has got her neck kind of turned and she's resting her head against her body. Cow cuddles is when you will insert yourself kind of in this nook area. You will lie up against where her head is, and the cow that you're connecting with will turn and wrap their head around you, essentially mimicking like a hug. And so we offer this opportunity quite a bit actually, and have been sold out months in advance. But again, please keeping in mind that sometimes we may have these booked and our cows are like, nope, not today. And that's okay, because we won't make them do it, obviously. And so we'll transfer to a different opportunity. But when you ever, if and when you come out here, I hope to at least give you an opportunity to come out here and participate in a cow cuddle. Cow cuddles, we book them for 1 hour sessions. And so generally this is scheduled around their ruminating time. And so if you're familiar with ruminating or not, I'll just give a quick explanation. So cows, goats, and sheep have 4-chambered tummies, and they also have one set of teeth, so bottom teeth. And so because their primary source of food is hay, and if you only have one set of teeth just on the bottom and no upper teeth, I'm sure you can imagine how difficult that might be to break it down for them to digest. So what they'll do is they'll chew it, swallow, and then spit it back up. And that's a process they continue to do until it is ready to be and can be digested properly. So a lot of times if you see cows lying down like this, and you'll see it looks like they're chewing gum with their mouth open. That's also called chewing the cud. That is what that's what ruminating is. And so ruminating also helps generate heat in their bodies. And so another like educational fact with sheep, a lot of times people tend to think when sheep have all their wool grown in that they must be really warm and set during winter time, when in fact that is not true. Sheep actually need to, and as well as like cows and goats, they need continual access to hay, even more so than ever during the winter colder months, because ruminating generates body heat for them. And if you take away any of that food, they now lose that process or that opportunity to engage in that process. So, and I'd mentioned that we do partner with Colorado State University's vet school. They are #1 actually for ruminant healthcare. So again, that's our sheep, our cows, and our goats. And so the partnership has been extremely mutually beneficial. One, it gives us an opportunity to show a different side to farmed animals, whereas, you know, that vet school is a livestock vet school. And so their perception and understanding of farmed animals is very different. But #2, because there are sanctuaries and more compassionate people, farmed animals, some are getting to live beyond the animal agricultural age that has been given to them. And what that means too, though, is a lot of vets don't have that background or understanding of how to properly care for an aging farmed animal. So this partnership has been very, very beneficial for both. Oh, and this is our care team, 3 of them. There's Anna and Bridget and Nick. Sorry to put you on the spot. The 3 of our care staff. And so our care staff, when you come out to visit, or if you see any of our social medias, we also have a newsletter that gets sent out at the end of every month that just talks about various health updates or new health concerns to volunteers of the community. And if that's something you're interested, please let me know, and I'd be happy to get you on that list. But our caretakers are divided into 2 groups. We have our A and our B team. Essentially, all that means is they work on a 4-10 schedule now. And so we have a team that works Sunday through Wednesday and a team that works Wednesday through Saturday. So these individuals are fantastic people. Their whole job is to make sure that our residents are doing well and receive the best quality of life here at Luvin Arms. So, sorry, I was hoping to show you more of our cows, but they're all literally down in the back 20. And I know for sure I will lose my connection with you. How do we keep flies away? That's good. So how we keep flies away, unfortunately, it's a little difficult to do that. But one thing we do to protect our cows from flies is they will wear fly masks. Thankfully, so far this season, because it hasn't been overly hot, we haven't had a terrible fly problem yet. But one thing we'll do is they wear the fly mask. They'll wear it all day long. If you haven't seen a fly mask, essentially it's just a covering that covers their eyes and part of their, I guess, like mouth area coming down. They can still very much breathe. You can still see their nose and their ears, but it is like I guess the material is almost like a window screen. It's a mesh that they can still see through. And then the other thing is there are some, very animal friendly sprays out there that we can, oh, I have a friend, sorry. So here's Brinkley. She's just walked up. But there are some sprays that we can spray onto like, our residents, like ankles. Oh gosh, she's covered in mud. Sorry. I was not prepared for that. So it's a spray that we can spray around their ankles and their hoof area to help deter flies from coming out and biting on them. We do that with our equine as well. And I would say last summer, we had a really terrible fly season. We had biting flies, I feel like, for the first time ever. So these guys were bigger. And it was a lot more intense to get bitten by a biting fly than the traditional flies that we've had over the years. Hide sheets spray. See, that's kind of cool. I've also heard that. So Lars Roperitz have tried sheets in a zebra pattern since flies don't land on zebra skin. It's actually pretty fascinating. And I have heard that. We've not tried that yet though. Maybe we can do that this summer. We have put leggings on our donkeys before, full cover. So maybe we can find outside zebra leggings. So if there are no more questions, I am going to move on to, yes. And so I know there are some essential oils, like I know peppermint is a big one around here as well. But I know with some of our pigs, and meeting Lizzie or seeing her again might be a really good example. But I know some residents have some adverse reactions to certain essential oils. But I will say that we have used peppermint, and I can't remember what the other one was, primarily for like mice, and then also for like ants become a pretty big thing around here as well, like inside the office area. Okay, so we are going to meet our pigs. So we have 9 pigs, and most of them are out grazing. But here, as I mentioned earlier, this is Brinkley, and Brinkley was rescued along with 2 others, her brother Garth and the best guy ever, Gilmore. And with that said, you'll notice that Brinkley here has got sunscreen, or this white goop on her ears. You'll notice that all of our fair skinned pigs have sunscreen behind their ears. And a lot of times, especially as the sun is out more and the hotter it gets, that you'll find that our pigs are either fully or half covered in mud. And so pig skin is identical to human skin. And with that, the fair skin that we are, right, more susceptible to like sunburns and things like that if we don't use sunblock or other forms of protection. Pigs are no different. And so 365 days a year, twice a day, our care team will put on sunscreen behind the pig's ears. And so you'll see they just got another application of that. And then because pigs cannot sweat, but also need that sunblock sunscreen protection, mud serves both of those purposes. And so essentially with the mud, you'll see that the pigs will roll all in it and they let it dry. It becomes a natural sun protectant. But also because pigs can't sweat, here's Garth. This is Brinkley's brother, or we say they're brothers, but or siblings. But because they can't cool off on their own, they do require access to something that will help keep them cool. And for pigs, that would be your mud pits. And so that is those 2. So again, this one here is Garth. Garth is an alpha. And so another interesting thing to know about pigs operate on a hierarchy. There is always someone at the top, whether if it's an alpha or a matriarch, and there's always someone at the bottom. When we stopped earlier to meet Lizzie and Felix, Felix is that alpha. He is the king of the pigs. Everyone knows if Felix enters that they leave, right? Like, and again, literally nothing could be happening. And if Felix walks in and other pigs are resting, they will all stand up very quickly and squeal and run as quickly as they can, but also as dramatically as they can. And so like most times, if not all times, literally no one is hurt. But that's just how pigs operate. And so with that said, Felix, who you met, is number 1. Number 2 is his girl, Lizzie. And then number 3 would be your boy, Garth here. And so a lot of times, even if they have close relationships, you can still see some of that hierarchy come out to play. And so for a very brief moment there, Garth came up when both Brinkley and I were there, and he goes up. She starts to make a noise. They grunt at each other. She gets a little bit panicked and will walk away. So that's just kind of how the hierarchy operates now, but also to keep in mind with the hierarchy with pigs, your position can change. It can change very quickly. And so an example is, say you, if you are one of the pigs, you're number 2 and you get sick and you have to be separated, obviously to recover a little bit more peacefully and a little bit more safely. What can end up happening is your spot essentially has been now taken by the next one in line, and you essentially have to regain that slot again. Sometimes it never happens, and sometimes it does. But that is just part of kind of the natural pig behavior. It is very difficult to watch, but it is very much a natural behavior they participate in. So we obviously don't interfere when that happens. You'll see here, big difference, right, between like the cow side and the pig side. The cow side was just really a lot of this, whereas the pig side, which goes all the way to that big tree back there, is just nothing but beautiful greenery. And so again, our cows and our sheep definitely eat everything from the root down. And so it definitely needs some time, water, and sun for it to regenerate. But it makes it a little difficult when the cows are out there or the sheep are out there constantly. But with all the moisture, a little green has started to come back. So we've been very thankful for that. So you'll see here again, the cow or the pig side, and then you'll see this fence here. And then on the other side of the fence is more greenery. That's the goat side. So again, even though they share the quote unquote same pasture space, we do have to keep them separated because again, both species, really all species, but these two, they're very food motivated. And so for the safety of all of them, we ensure that they can still have a shared space, but safely. Any questions about pigs? I'll point out like another kind of fun fact if you didn't already know. So, pigs, sometimes you'll hear, or maybe it's been said to you, or maybe you have said this in the past, but like, oh, your room's such a pigsty, go clean it up, or pigs are super dirty, or pigs are not intelligent, or animals in general aren't intelligent. Well, we all know that's not true, but pigs, if anything, are extremely intelligent. There has been research done, studies done that show that pigs, have the same intelligence of like a 3 to 4-year-old human toddler, even older in some cases. And I can definitely attest to that. When I started working here, my son was 4, and many of the pigs I met were much more intelligent than my son at 4 years old. But I can also prove that they are just as intelligent as a 7-year-old because there are some things they figured out that my son has yet to figure out. So pigs are extremely intelligent. The other thing too is pigs are actually really, really clean. They are the cleanest farmed animals. What that means is, if you notice in here, and I don't know if you remember when we were visiting with sheep and taking a look at the ground, but you'll notice like you can walk in a pig's area and not worry about stepping in any waste by any means, right? Pigs do not like to go potty where they eat and sleep at all. They are very, very clean. Obviously, they roll in mud, but those are really for reasons that are very valid, right? To cool off or for sunblocks. But the one thing is, because we are a farmed animal sanctuary, we do close our residents in for the evening for safety, for weather. And when that happens, they still have to go potty at some point during the night. So what happens is, in each and any of the stalls, whoever that alpha or matriarch is, the highest ranking, they will determine where the potty spot is. And then that's where everyone goes. So when you come to volunteer at Luvin Arms to do AM or PM care, which means helping keeping their areas tidy, interacting with them, preparing food for them, whatever it may be, you will always notice that pigs tend to get done way quicker, right? And it's less dirty looking than any other farmed animal species. You will not find pigs, using the potty in their bedrooms and then laying on it. Very different story for all of the other, fuzzy cuddly guys that we have here. So that misconception of pigs are the dirtiest is in fact not true, right? They are very clean. So I know we briefly talked about Felix's story. I am going to briefly tell you about Lizzie's story. But I also share a really interesting resource if you're interested in maybe hearing a little bit more about Lizzie's story. But essentially, Lizzie is our one and only farm factory pig. All of our other pigs come from, various forms of the food industry or just severe abuse neglect cases. But Lizzie here is really a star in her own right. She is very well known throughout the animal activism world. So if you're familiar there was a trial that happened in St. George, Utah back in the fall of 2023 involving two gentlemen, but I'll speak of Wayne specifically. So Wayne Fung, who's also is a lawyer. You've probably seen him on some sort of social media channel or the news because he continues to do a lot of law work and activist work. But Wayne stood trial along with his colleague, his friend, and they were acquitted. But what did they stand trial for? Well, they stood trial for the essential kidnapping, and I'm using air quotes, right? Or the taking property of what's not theirs, and then also crossing state lines, and that's what they stood trial for. So one of those individuals was Lizzie, the other was her sister Lily. So Wayne and another individual of DXC went into a factory farm, specifically a gestation crate operation out in Utah. And it's a factory farm that is owned by Smithfield. And as you may know, filming, taking photos, driving by, whatever, of any sort of factory farm is absolutely illegal to do. But Wayne and his friends said, we're going to push this even further, and we're going to do a live Facebook kind of streaming opportunity, showcasing and highlighting what they were seeing in real time. During that video, they came across two very sick piglets, one being Lizzie, the other being her sister Lily. And they took the two girls to go get them treatment because one, they have no idea which mom is going to be theirs. And obviously mom can't get to the two girls because mom is stuck in a gestation crate. And so these girls were like on the brink of death. They took the two girls to a sanctuary out in Utah. Unfortunately, the sanctuary did not have the financial means to help support their medical care. And so that's how we got involved. Now, there was a lot of concern, and I will tell you, when I started working here in 2022, we on tours did not tell Lily and Lizzie's story. We didn't say, oh yeah, Smithfield, factory farm, rescue, open rescue, none of those things. Because one, the individuals were still very much under investigation. Two, there is a concern, right? Like you never know if people find out that this is Lily and Lizzie, that they might not react in a very adverse way towards the girls or towards the organization. And so we would just say, oh yeah, they're pigs that come from a factory farm. We don't know where they came from. And so that whole year, up until really Wayne's trial. So when Wayne was acquitted, we were allowed to now finally tell the full story, right? And so part of that story too, though, is when the girls were brought here after the sanctuary in Utah could not meet the financial kind of need to provide the medical care these girls needed. When they left Utah and they are looked at as property, stolen property, and they cross state lines, it now becomes a federal case. And so with that said, when they caught wind and thought maybe the girls were here at Luvin Arms, and at the time, Luvin Arms, I believe, had maybe one or two paid staff people, and they were care staff. The rest were volunteers that did all of the day in, day out work with these residents. And this was in 2016, towards the latter part of the year. So when the search for Lily and Lizzie came here to Luvin Arms, it involved the FBI, every local law enforcement group you could possibly think of, from county to state to, local town law enforcement officers, along with a state veterinarian. And so basically what they were looking for was to collect DNA from the pigs to see, are these in fact the pigs from Smithfield that were stolen from Smithfield? So as we all know, DNA can be collected through a variety of ways, right? Like a quick blood sample, a hair follicle. But state veterinarians can decide how and when and where they're going to collect this DNA. And in Lizzie's case, they decided to chop off parts of her ear. And so to show you here, you'll notice just really quickly. So you'll notice here, Felix, he's got wow, I don't know why I'm talking so weird. The tip of his ear kind of comes into a triangular, I guess, like shape. And then you'll notice here, Lizzie's looks like it's been cut. Like there's something like, where is the piece, right? But it's not just this one. It's also this other ear, which I don't know if you can see very well. So you'll see that veterinarian and team of folks thought the best way, the only way we can collect is by cutting off physical parts of this girl. Now, when this procedure and process was happening, obviously no anesthetics, no antibiotics, no pain medications, nothing. But if you've ever heard a pig squeal, whether if it's in sheer enjoyment or out of fear, it is deafening. So imagine, right, when it's in fear, it almost feels even louder than any other sound, right? A happy squeal. Well, after that happened to her, the next pig, which would have been Lily, they needed to do her too, but they were essentially mortified by this happening, the response of Lizzie, that it was like, we're not going to do this to the other pig. But that day forever changed this girl's life. She became withdrawn from people. She became distrusting of people, right? And rightfully so. And if it wasn't for her sister, I don't know if she would have ever come out of it. And so Lily always got to remain and grow up as that young, free-spirited, kind of lovey, always happy girl. Whereas Lizzie just had a very different perception and view of people and the world around her. So those two girls obviously spent their whole lives here since coming from Smithfield. And everyone has had an opportunity to watch them grow up. Unfortunately, with pigs and farmed animals in general, right? When they are intentionally bred to grow really fast, or to, I don't know, essentially just grow really fast, a lot of additional health problems will incur, and generally a little bit quicker. So we talked earlier about Felix and his brother, his best buddy, Franklin. Well, Franklin passed away when he was about 2 years old. And a lot of it became because he was just overweight, right? And over time, that puts a lot of pressure on their legs and just on their overall health. And when an animal, a farmed animal, becomes lame, which essentially means they can no longer move for themselves or move on their own, then the most humane thing you can do, especially for pigs who do not want to ever live in their own waste, is to, be with them and let them go. And so you'll notice here with like Lizzie, like how big she is. And she's our biggest guy now, our biggest gal, I should say. And then there's Felix. But again, with the weights and just the health problems that happen there. Also, when I talked briefly about the skin and putting sunscreen and the importance of that, I mean, Lizzie here gets slathered in it, but this girl loves sunbathing. And obviously we would never take that happiness and freedom away from her. But you'll notice that she'll have these like lesions here, right? And so these are all essentially due to skin cancer or lesions. And so they're treated. We put topical ointments on them. But, so again, with pigs and how they've been bred and treated can lead to a lot of just like terrible things at the end. Now, going back to all of that and how they're similar to people and experiencing similar issues. Lily, her sister, again, free-spirited, super fun, just the best girl in the world. She also had cancer. And then eventually her mind started to go. She just wasn't there. And so, unfortunately, Lily passed away May 1st of 2023. And there was a time there, that we saw Lizzie again, went into this deep depression. She started having some significant health issues, and we didn't know if she was going to pull through. Like, what was worth living for her now? Her sister's gone, her one solid support system. But thankfully, Lizzie, I think, just maybe turned a little bit more to like Felix, or really connected with Frankie and Arnie, who are two of our smaller big pigs. But you can see he's still here. And one thing that I didn't mention about the Smithfield trial, so the reason why, right? Because people will ask, well, why did Smithfield care, right? Because if you find out during the trial, I mean, their whole worth is about $30 to Smithfield, $30. So why would Smithfield go through all of this, right? Years and years, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on an investigation. Well, there was a thing that Smithfield was working on, and it was waiting for a patent that they had submitted to be approved, right, for them. And that patent is the genetic DNA material that is Lizzie, right, or that is Lily. And so this was something that they had been working on as a company, because a lot of people think, right, the lighter the pig is, the better the meat is. And so that was part of their like DNA that they were working on. So Smithfield was concerned that wherever these pigs were going, that they were going to be like genetic material would be pulled from them in order to then maybe recreate or, I don't know, get that product out there faster. Obviously, when they found out that the girls had been spayed, because that's what we do, we spay and neuter all of our residents, with an asterisk there. But once they found out that that was the case, there was no interest of Lizzie or Lily, right? And then more, it's like, now it's the principle of stealing. Open rescue is not a thing. But again, the fact that these individuals who took on such a controversial topic, right? Facebook live streaming a gestation factory farm, showing what's really happening during a time when Smithfield was waiting for a patent, having them cross state lines, like, is just incredible, right? It brought a lot of awareness, and this happened in Utah, and Utah is not known for being liberal. They're very conservative. So the fact that not only did all of this happen, there's all this stuff that they did that technically is illegal, but the jury acquitted them. Like, they didn't, no time served, nothing, which is huge. And then to top off that story, at our gala, which we hold every year in 2024, we decided we're going to finally openly, publicly tell Lily and Lizzie's story. And it's not me that's going to say it, it's going to be from the founders. And so that's the first time we publicly ever mentioned their story and said, yes, we were the other sanctuary. Yes, this is in fact Lily and Lizzie. But part of, like most galas, you'll have a program or a theme. So we had Wayne speak. Unfortunately, he was actually waiting and standing trial in California for a chicken rescue. And so he could not be here. So he did a recording for us. But one of the main jurors, who I was convinced would never have a compassion healing trait in his body, actually not only came to our gala, was a speaker, but also went vegan because of Lily and Lizzie. And this is the guy, when I gave a tour to all the jurors that came out here in January of 2024, he came wearing very high end brand name leather products, was very kind of uppity, just kind of stood to the side, wouldn't really talk. But Lynn Carlson also became a vegan and is now a fierce advocate for pigs. So just to show you, there is possibility, right? All right. So last but not least, well, actually, I'll stop for a second. Are there any questions about pigs or Lizzie? And then we'll quickly wrap up with goats. And then what I will do, I mentioned about sharing some resources. There's a podcast with Wayne Shung and an episode with Charlene Shaw, who is one of the founders of Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary. And I think now the podcast is called Simple Hearts. It used to be called The Green Pill. Anyways, there's an episode there, and it's called The FBI's Hunt for Two Piglets. And so that is a really great podcast. And you're hearing it directly from Charlene, the day that happened and how that impacted everyone. I will send that to Kathleen so she can share that if anyone's interested. But last but not least, we've got our goats here. So over here, we've got Gelato. And she comes from Goat Dairy. When she came with her gal, who tragically passed away over a year ago now. But Gelato, just personality wise, is probably the kindest, most cuddly goat you will ever meet. Over here, we've got Garbanzo, and Garbanzo and his brother Lentil both come from the dairy industry, and they are males. And so males in the dairy industry, regardless of the species, really aren't needed except for one part. So generally, they are discarded. This is Desi, and I laugh every time because I've given, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of tours, it seems like, and people will ask every time, do goats really eat tin cans? Do they really eat like random, like inedible items? And we'll say no. But then when we got Desi, he has now lived up to this stereotype of goats because he will eat your hair, eat your shoelaces. He will eat your jacket, like he'll eat anything. But he's still very sweet. But now I can't say, no, that's just a stereotype because he has broken that. This is Eileen. Eileen was actually, oh, bless you, was actually our rescue. She was born at a local goat dairy. And because she was born with a physical impairment, which she does get physical therapy for, she was going to be disposed of. But one of our former care staff members goes to vet school at CSU. And when she found out about that, she called us and asked if we could take her. So we obviously said yes. But the goat dairy also recognizes that babies do better developmentally if they are paired with another similar same aged peer. And that's how we got Desi. Desi was essentially a bonus gift, as the dairy referred to him, to help support her growth. But Desi is a wonderful asset to our sanctuary family. Super cute, very playful. And then let me see, I got to introduce you to Alfie and Xander and Aria, I think Aria's out in the pasture. So this is Xander. He's our kind of socially awkward goat. Generally during tours, we will separate Xander and our big guy back there, Alfie. And the reason is they're just they're mature. They are set in their ways. And sometimes it's hard to understand goat. And so for people's safety, we will just make sure that they are like separated. So they're not brushing up against you with a little bit more love using their horns. And they generally do really well. But both of these guys were essentially coming and used for part of weed mitigation, as well as horse boarding facility companionship, which is still very common because goats make really great friends to horses. But when places shut down, they don't think of all the residents there. And so unfortunately, sometimes they get left behind. And we're thankful that we get those calls to help step in and make a forever home for them. And then here, this is Lentil. This is Garbanzo's brother, or we call him Lenny. And so last fun fact here, there's two I'll tell you. If you notice, they have rectangular pupils. So if they are prey animals, and so rectangular pupils give them a peripheral field of vision of 340 degrees. So they can see everything around them except for what's directly behind their head. And the other fact that I have learned while being here too is that if you like coffee, you should thank a goat because goats were the first to discover coffee. So that is all I have. And I know we're 5 minutes over. So I will let Kathleen and Julie take it from here. Thanks for letting me join, guys.
That was just amazing. And that when the FBI came, that was horrific. I was, of course, with the sanctuary there, and even though I wasn't on site, but I didn't know the story about the patent. I had no idea that was
so that was never made public knowledge. It was discussed in court, and it came from a secret source named Wayne.
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, we were very, I mean, this was a really serious situation and we were zipped about it. We just were protecting Lily and Lizzie. So yeah, it was I know it was scary. So, yeah, well, thank you so much. That was so interesting, and it was fun seeing everybody. Not everybody, but quite a few. I was going to wear my Alfie shirt today because but I couldn't find it. It's my newest Luvin Arms shirt. But yeah, I want to mention, that both, well, both UUAM and Luvin Arms are 501c3 entities, and we both rely on donations of supporters to follow our missions. If you would like to support our organizations and, as they say, be a part of the change, please donate if you can. I would also encourage you to locate an animal sanctuary in your area, visit, volunteer, support. And of course, if you find yourself in Colorado, visit Luvin Arms. It's right off of I-25, very easy to get to, and a lot of fun to really interact with residents, one-on-one. And, GFAS has been mentioned, and there are GFAS sanctuaries all over the U.S. And even if it's not a GFAS animal sanctuary, look up ones that are in your area and see if you can get involved in some way or support in some way, because it is a way of reaching out to more people and sharing information and knowledge. And so here is a slide for you to see the way that you can connect with Luvin Arms and donate if you are so moved. And we, of course, have our own slide here for UUAM, because if you enjoy these kinds of programs and would like to help us, like I said, the programs we offer are free to anyone who would like to register, but we do offer compensation to our speakers. So in order for us to continue our work and reach out to people, we do need donations also. We also have a merchandise store and the social media, and would love to have any kind of support that you would like to be able to say. And I would like to invite you to view our past programs, which are available on our website and on YouTube. And one I had not mentioned previously, but if you've enjoyed this, it's one of my favorites. We offered it in February of 2024, and it's called Love Stories. And it's a 20-minute video highlighting the various terms for love used around the world and at the meetings. And the relationships are depicted by showing relationships among the species at Luvin Arms, and it's and including the human species. So it's a really great video to watch, and you see even more of the animals at Luvin Arms, because this was actually kind of professionally done, and they show up. So anyway, it's a favorite of mine. But I do want to thank everyone for attending, and hope that you will follow us on, sign up for our newsletter, sign up for Luvin Arms newsletter, and keep in touch with us and our future activities that we have, both of the organizations. So I do want to thank you for attending, and I just want to say, please go forth in ahimsa, nonviolence towards all beings. And
Well,
thank you very much.
thanks, Kathleen. And just one more question. Lars is asking if UUAM sponsors any of the residents.
We don't sponsor any residents at Luvin Arms. I just happen to know them, and I was heavily involved with them. I used to, walk Alfie around when he was just a tiny guy by his horns. Of course, you don't do that anymore. You scratch him between his horns, but you do things that they like as they grow older. But we don't sponsor any residents at Luvin Arms. We are making a donation to Luvin Arms as a thank you for this tour. Does that answer the question? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for attending, and I hope we see you at our next program too. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, look, it's good night here. It's not good night everywhere.
Good night.
Thanks to everybody.